with that, I guess the next presentation we have is Bill Parkhurst. Mr. Parkhurst, in regards to the Smith Tract. Come on up, please.
For 60 years, I've been blessed to live on the Hammonton Lake. And so every morning when I get up for 60 years, look across the lake into what we call now the Smith Tract. And it has occurred to me recently that how many people in Hammonton really, they might know the Smith Tract by a name, but that's it. So my goal tonight is to have the people, all you that are here and the people that are on Channel 9, is to put a face behind the story behind the Smith Tract. It all begins with this, mostly about the Loveland family. During the 1980s, Crowley and Loveland family were instrumental in piloting ships and building ships along the Mullica. Think Crowley Town. Miss Crowley was Miss New Jersey. So this was Mr. Samuel Crowley. And he was quite a guy. I just learned this about him from his grandson recently. He captained the largest yacht at the time. I think it was 924 feet. And it was from the Drexel family. Drexel family is from Philadelphia. They trusted him to take it around the world on this craft. The mansion actually was built by the Slate families in the Roaring '20s. They lost it in the Depression years of the 1930s. And Mr. Loveland bought it. He bought 15 acres on the Hammonton Lake. It goes from the lake all the way back to Central Avenue. Of course, they own 105 acres across from the lake in what was called now the Smith Tract. So this is the Loveland estate that they bought. It's just a beautiful, beautiful picture setting. I mean, I can remember it because my family was friendly with the Loveland family. I can remember the laurel and the azaleas and all the trails they had, and where you could walk on this very small stone. And the trails that they had went throughout their property and onto the next property, which we will get to. They had maids, they had quarters for the gardeners. They had swimming pool, which was pretty unusual in those days. And they had a Model A or Model T engine that operated a pump. Once the property was sold, once the estate to Louis Colacerda, at the time that he was interested in the stock in Boardwalk National Bank, he was interested in becoming a director there. And I think this might have been part of it because the Lovelands had plenty of stock because Mr. Smith had been the president of the bank for all those years. So he got the stock and he got the directorship. And then he got the estate. When he and his wife passed away, it was sold to Georgie Mordelite, the whole property, subdivided, and the mansion was raised. And this is what the house looks like, the new house looks like. Mrs. Gertrude Loveland, she had a bridge club, and there was room in there for 3 or 4 bridge tables. And every month or every so often, there would be a bridge club party, and old Packards, that was the prestigious car of the day, and they would roll in there and they would have bridge games, and then about the middle of the bridge games the maid would come out with iced tea and pastry. Kind of nice to think of, that's the way it was in those days from a historical point of view. That remains there. That's 110 years old now. So they also own next door Evans Woolen Mill. So when Hammonton was incorporated in 1872, there were only 2 premises on the Central Avenue side of the lake. Sam Loveland's son, Sam Jr., married Doris Crane. Doris Crane was a daughter from Crane Lumberyard. Some of you might remember that. So they were married, had 5 children. They lived in the mansion, and then they decided to remodel Evans Woolen Mill into a home for their 5 children. And they remodeled it, and we bought it. That's when my wife and I have lived since the 1968. A good historical story about, if you see the window, big window on the top, that's on the lake side, and the other one on the bottom is the Central Avenue side. Well, back in the day, and probably none of you remember this, but on Friday nights, it was a night when everybody banked. And everybody did their shopping. There was no malls, there was no anything. And so on Friday night that I had been married in 1968, and I bought 2 lots across the lake, and I had architect's plans, and I was ready to go. So I saw that the present owner of that, Scotty Nelson, he was in the bank, and he was in the next line. And I said, Scotty, I'm going to stop over. I'm going to take a look at that window. I'm building a house. He said, Bill, you come over And he said, you can have the window, the house, and the whole property. By Monday night, we had an agreement of sale. And so I was been so fortunate, blessed there. My mother and father lived next door, and so I could have been with them for the rest of their lives, there every day, and their grandchildren could run over, which is wonderful. And the babysitters were going to Cafe San Rocco on Saturday night, wasn't a problem. And that was the house that they bought. That was also part of the Loveland lakefront property. That went back to Central Avenue as well. My father and I were so busy in the store, we probably didn't see it till it went up. My mother took care of the whole thing. Met with the architects, landscape architects. So here is the Loveland family. So I'm going to have to spend just a moment, I hope I don't wear out my welcome, talking about the Loveland family. This is Samuel Loveland Jr., Sam. He graduated from Hammonton High in 1925. He was the first person from Hammonton to be ever admitted to Princeton. He came from wealth. He was the kind of guy that you would enjoy. They moved to Morristown, probably the late 40s, early 50s. Sam had a maritime business on the Delaware River. I've heard sometime he had hundreds of employees, barges and tugboats and so forth that had been in the family. Very successful. So he had a home in Morristown, and then when Society Hill or something right on the river, they bought an apartment there so he could just walk down the steps and walk to work in the morning right in the Delaware. During World War II, he was involved in the preparations for the invasion of Normandy because of his skills as in shipbuilding, that he spent time with others for the invasion. After World War II, with Admiral Flanagan, they bought tankers. They sailed across the Atlantic to deliver oil and gasoline to England. He became involved in the nuclear components. Most of the nuclear components were so large they couldn't go by road or rail. In those days, there were only 2 licensed shippers in the United States. And then when President Reagan got in, he deregulated. They lost their franchise. And then 3 Mile Island came along, and people decided no longer that they wanted to have that in their backyard. He went from there. When he left Morristown, he was a sailor at heart, must have been in the Lovelands, and even when he was in Hammonton, he had a sailboat. So he had a sailboat, and of course you have to have a boathouse. So during World War II, they had 5 children. They're in the new house now. They're in our house. His wife Doris felt she needs some help, so they had a Filipino couple that come in, and they transformed the boathouse into an apartment, full apartment and everything. And so what do you do then? You have to build another boathouse. You actually can see it really from the canoe club. Having said this, and he would use that, of course, to sail on the Chesapeake on the weekends. But even though he had of great wealth, a wonderful guy, the guy you like to sit next to in a baseball game, and his class would charter a bus for their yearly class reunions. And then because he had the 1,000 acres, he would invite some of his friends to come and hunt during the other season. This is Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith was president of the People's Bank and Trust for 32 years. This would be Gertrude Loveland's father. And when he became widowed and Mrs. Loveland's children moved to Morristown, she invited him to move in with her in the mansion. Just one good story about him, that was back in the days when the lake would freeze, and we looked forward to ice skating. He was such an ice skater that he was always dressed up in his top coat and his hat. And they said he had an ability to move down the ice almost without moving, where the rest of us are going like this. And anyway, that Gertrude took his ice skates away from him when he was 92. This is just another shot of the lake looking right at the canoe club. That's a wonderful thing that the town did when they built that canoe club. On the left-hand side, that's where the Smith Tract is. So now we come to the queen of our presentation. I just can't get over this picture because it's an artist rendering of her. I see someone that's sensitive, principled, gentle, and having this great love for the Hammonton Lake that she, at the time, in the 50s, the school board was thinking about building a new school. And they looked at this property on the other side of the lake, and she so loved the lake that she, as I've told the story so many times, sometimes I wonder if I've made some of this up. But anyway, that she wanted to leave it to Hammonton, and so she had her chauffeur take her to Trenton. It was supposed to be the a closure was eminent domain, noon on a certain day. Now, I made this up maybe, but 11:59, she got there and signed the papers as a wildlife sanctuary for the town. And this would be caught before the word environmental was even considered, and she did that. My point is that we talk about the Smith Tract. I would like to do something that people would, when they think of the Smith Tract, not just a name, but a family and a face. Here is the punchline, so to speak. So I'm asking the mayor and the council to declare Gertrude Smith Loveland Day in the future. In the 1950s, there was one by the name of Charles Dupre, who was not trained as an engineer in this way, but he had written something for the town to have a bridge across to the Smith Tract. And here a few years ago, Taylor Design also came up with a plan to have a bridge across. And when that's going to happen, we don't know that, if it's going to happen. So I just happened to look for a couple of things. One of them is that next summer, we're going to have 150th of Mount Lady Carmel. The following summer, it's going to be the birthday of America. So maybe that'll coincide, maybe by the next year, 2027, that maybe the bridge will be built or something like that. It might be an idea to have Gertrude Loveland Day. Maybe some event there with the fishing tournament, or there's a million things you can think of there. I can guarantee I'll be there in 27, but anyway. And the other thing is that I spent some time in Civil War battlegrounds. If you ever all been there, is that at a proper time, they have plaques where you can know where you were, what was going on. So something perhaps maybe with her picture in the lake, something like that, something we could do right away that wouldn't be expensive. And hopefully that would lead to my goal of trying to get people to know what the Smith Tract is. Adam promised me he's going to put it on Channel 9 so that they will have more people be able to look at it. That is my presentation to you tonight. And thank you very much for the time and so forth.
Thank you.